Now it looks as stock.
22, much large, barely fits. I was finished, or at least I thought, until I looked over my box and I found that I forgot to add these rubber, I guess, mounts, dampeners to the system. So I need to disassemble everything again and reassemble everything again. Nice. The stock Lexus IS200 fuel system is a returnless type, which means that there is a fuel pressure regulator which sits at the pump, and then there is only the
Fuel dampener on the fuel rail.
This system works when you have, stock system with NA motor, but this is not good when you have a turbo setup, because when you boost the engine, there is a certain pressure that is working against these injectors, and you need extra fuel pressure to compensate for the boost that is added to the intake. That's when you need to add a fuel pressure regulator. This one is that I'm going to use on my engine. Now what I need to do is to adapt everything to AN fittings, just because the fuel pressure regulator uses that, and I've got some fittings to use that. So what I'm thinking is adding a AN adapter that I bought yesterday, which should look like this, and then from there I can add AN fittings, add a hose that goes to the fuel pressure regulator. The keen-eyed of you might say that it is different than what we did on Justus Lexus IS200, the green one, and that is because Justus used this part for the line that goes to the fuel pressure regulator. But the issue is that ideally you would want the fuel pressure regulator going after the hole of the fuel rail. So this spot is more ideal, but as you can see, there is some things in the way. And the first thing is this all feed line that goes to the VVTi solenoid, and the second thing that is in the way is this bracket. But I think I can remove some of the material to make space for the fitting, and until I do that, I'm not sure if I can bend this line enough to add the AN90 probably that will go somewhere to there, to the fuel pressure regulator.
These are injectors out of 1ZZ FE engine. They are 255 cc per minute, whereas the stock 1G FE are only 155 cc per minute. This is an essential upgrade for boosted IS200s.
So I had to bend a little bit this pipe, but now it clears. I have just enough space to tighten the fitting, and here once again the cutaway bracket is now not in the way of the 90-degree AN fitting, and here we also have space. So now I'll have to think of a best place for the fuel pressure regulator. I've temporarily added the fuel pressure regulator in the place that I'm thinking of using it, and it should have pretty good access for the from the fuel rail, and then pretty good angles for the return back to the fuel tank. Just finished the first fuel line, which goes from the fuel rail to the fuel pressure regulator. I think it came out pretty good, though I'm not sure that these Chinese eBay special fittings will actually seal, because I don't know, it seems kind of loose.
in I think it was this fitting, but we'll have to pressure test it, and if it will not work, I'll buy some decent ones. But I hope that these ones work out, because well, I don't want to spend more money on this car, at least now. And for the next line that comes from the bottom of the fuel pressure regulator, which is the return fuel, I need to sort out the return line, which goes from the fuel tank, let's say, and goes all the way to the engine. So that will be next. Now I've got a new line for the return. It is actually the feed line from a different car, but it is exactly the same line as this one, which goes on to the fuel dampener and then to the fuel rail. So since it is exactly the same pipe, it fits very well. And one thing is nice, that the Lexus engineers actually put 3 places for like this thicker line, and one is for the feed, one is for the carbon canister, and the middle one is actually empty on a stock IS200, which means that there is a perfect place to add another line. Now I've already cut the line, as you can see, because this is how it looks on the stock. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a fitting that I will show a bit later, that will convert from this plain line to a AN fitting. This is the other end. So this is the stock fuel feed line, and as you can see, because it is the same line, it terminates at the same location. And once again, I'll be adding a adapter that converts from this 8mm outer diameter line to a AN line, which I can then route up to the top of the fuel tank to make a return line. I will be using this adapter. As you can see, one end is a AN fitting, and the other is quite similar. Actually, it is the same fittings that they gave me for the turbo feed lines, but if you remember, I actually welded this little piece that is inside. Let me take it out. So I welded this piece to the pipe. So the guys explained to me that actually I don't need to weld it. I just need to tighten it enough so that this piece deforms by the shape that is on this end, and it actually like not welds, but just crimps, I guess would be the correct term, maybe different term, but you know, it collapses onto the line and pretty much is there forever. So yeah, I made a mistake last time, didn't understand the guys, but this time I'll try to use these properly and see if they will work. So I've done one of the fittings. The inner part, it did collapse onto the pipe. I've just tightened the fittings as tight as I could, and it seems to work. So the fitting, for example, here, it kind of is stuck just because there is a bend here and the diameter changes. So if you're adding these kinds of fittings, check for a spot where there is plenty of straight pipe. Now all of the lines up to the fuel tank are finished. So once again, the line coming from the fuel rail goes to the fuel pressure regulator. The excess pressure is released through the bottom, which goes there, and then continues here, goes back to the second feed line, which is now the return. And because I'm using the stock fuel line and there was additional space for it, now it looks as stock. You cannot tell that this is not how it's supposed to be, well, except for the brightly colored fittings. And in the back there is the other fitting and a 90 that goes up to the fuel pump holder, I guess. I was not going to make a detailed video about how to do the fuel pump return mod, but sadly one of the videos that I've watched and Eustace watched, and it is the basis for this part, was deleted from YouTube. I don't know why, but I guess it's time to further the knowledge to other people through this video. So this is a spare fuel pump assembly that I've got with the car when I bought it. And essentially what we need to do is remove this fuel pressure regulator and make a new line that comes from the top through this hole and goes to, I believe, yeah, and goes to this port. This piece is very important because this is the jet valve, I think it's called. And what it does is this place actually connects to the other side of the fuel tank, which allows the returning fuel to suck in fuel from the other side of the tank. And if you don't do this properly, you will have half the tank capacity. So first thing to do is to unclip this. And now we need to remove this whole assembly. The fuel pressure regulator. To remove it, you need to cut away this plastic and remove it, but be careful not to damage the this plastic assembly. So yeah, I cut away. You need to go slowly and see that you don't damage the barbs too much. But yeah, once you cut away, you can take this out. Do the same for the other side, I guess. So you're left off with this. Now what you need to do with this is to block either this side or this side. It doesn't really matter, and it does not really matter how. One way of doing is, I watched in the video that a guy just screwed in a bolt like so, just fully. And another way is to actually collapse this and essentially crimp it, fold it over, and that should also make a good seal. So yeah, let's add a gas line to this end and listen if there is any gas escaping. Okay, so I've opened the gas up and you can hear that if I don't fit the hose very good, the gas is escaping. But once I've clamped down on the tube, everything is fine. I can't hear any gas escaping, so fuel will not escape too. So for the next step, it's not like necessary depending on how you decide to do, but I will remove this lower part with the fuel pump so I can get better access to there. So we will need to run a new line which goes through this hole, and you need to drill a hole so we can add a fitting through the plastic. You can do various fittings. I decided to go with a full AN system, but for example on Eustace's car, instead of having an AN fitting, he just used a hose that connects between here and the return line. I'll use a AN fitting just because, I don't know, looks nicer, I guess. So this fitting will go through the plastic like so, but of course in this place where the hole is located. So I decided the placement that I want, which will be pretty much just slightly over to the center from this rib. So I punched a hole where I want to drill it, and I've located that by shining a light from the backside and seeing the ribs and just essentially kind of guessing but kind of getting in a way. And the problem is that I need to make sure that this nut can be bolted on. So I'll be adding an O-ring for better sealing hopefully. Though in one of the videos that I've seen, a guy didn't use any sealant, pretty much the seal from the thread itself, but I don't think that will work really good. So yeah, it is sitting. Let's see if the nut bolts on. Yep, so we can bolt this down. 22, quite large, barely fits. So yeah, now this should in theory will not go anywhere. Let's go test fit to see if I can add this AN line and if it fits in the car. So this is how it looks in the car. As you can see, there is still plenty of space in all directions for the AN fitting, and I'll just need to cut this line a bit shorter. I think I'll clock the fitting more towards like pretty much the same angle as this fuel feed line, and yeah, I think it will work out very nice. So we want to connect this fitting with this, and then we'll have a complete return system. And to do that, I've also got a fitting that of course screws over here, and to connect all that you need a special hose. So this hose is actually marked as submersible because other fuel hoses, I think they're not manufactured to be in contact with fuel from both inside and outside, so they would swell up and break down. And this one is very expensive. I think it's 15 euros for this length of fuel hose, but that is just enough for us to connect everything. Now this old fuel pressure regulator will go back into its place, and its purpose now will be to block off the path going from the pump, and then the old place where this connected we will connect to our new hose. Well, I was finished, or at least I thought, until I looked over my box and I found that I forgot to add these rubber, I guess, mounts, dampeners to the system. So I need to disassemble everything again and reassemble everything again. Nice. So this time I've got the rubber pieces in, the one that sits below the fuel pump itself, this black part, and also at the bottom. I forgot those, so now those are in, and hopefully this will be the final time the pump is out. So everything here is now assembled. The AN line is tightened, the fuel feed is tightened, and yeah, everything fits. Now a couple of things left with the fuel system. So first of all, I need to disassemble the lines and clean them because I've cut them and there might be some metal, rubber and other particles in the line, so I need to blow them out with compressed air. I have ordered new set of O-rings for the injectors, however the order has been delayed, so I'm not sure when I'm going to receive them, but essentially the fuel system is finished, only cleanup left. So I think that is the end of the video and time for me to move on to the exhaust.